Today we're going to replace this pressure tank with this new larger one to reduce the cycle time and just upgrade it. So let's get started. This is supposed to be a really nice tank from what I've read all the reviews, so we're going to use that one. And first thing you want to do is shut off your water, shut off your well pump, shut off all the electric to everything. All right, here's what I used to do this job. You're gonna need a couple pipe wrenches. I've got a pretty big 18-inch one. This will do, you know, the 1-inch pipe, and then a smaller pipe wrench, couple adjustable wrenches. You're gonna need thread sealant, pipe thread sealant, and then I use a little bit of faucet and valve grease on an O-ring. Then you need a couple screwdrivers. I use an impact gun to get a couple of the hose clamps off. And then you're gonna need stuff to solder your joints. So you gotta be able to cut your pipes. You need a couple pipe cutters. I think you're gonna want a little stubby one and a regular one. A couple things to clean up the pipe, solder, flux, and then a torch. And that should be, you know, the main things you need. Oh, and a pen to mark your pipe. That should be the main stuff you need to do this job. My main shut off is actually right here. That should shut the main well off. And then this is the shut off to the water that goes up to the house. We're going to shut that off too. Then we're going to turn the power off to the well pump also. Quick check. That line's hot right now. We're going to shut the well pump off. Make sure it worked. It did. So you're good. You can take that off. It's a good idea to take a picture of you know, the way this is hooked up, just so that you don't forget, or if you're trying to hook it up later and you can't remember, it's just nice to have the picture. And then I do the same thing with the plumbing, you know, just take a couple pictures for yourself, save yourselves the trouble in case you can't remember how something's hooked up. All right, what you want to do first is get all the pressure out of the system. So you want your water turned off, your well pump turned off, the water to the house turned off, and then you want to go upstairs and open it, or you know, wherever, and open up a faucet and release all this pressure. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna run upstairs, open up a faucet. It's gonna release the pressure from the house, and then we're gonna open this valve and let the water kind of drain out. The reason this bucket's filled is because this valve, this gate valve is leaking. So I'm gonna replace that with a nice ball valve too while we're in here. So anyways, I'm gonna go upstairs, open the faucets, and get this pressure to start going down. So the faucet's open, but this tank, you know, is filled with water. So we're gonna open up the water to the house. You're gonna hear it run. This pressure is gonna drop down, you know, as this tank empties out. You hear the water running upstairs. And that was the click. That would have turned the well pump back on, but you know, I've got it shut off and I've got this valve closed, so nothing's gonna happen, just water's gonna drain out. While we're waiting, we'll check the cutting pressure of this pressure tank. So you just need to get to this Schrader valve and get yourself a tire gauge. You want it to be 2 psi below your cutting pressure. So my old system runs 30-50. So I think from the factory this is coming in at 40. So we're going to drop it down to 28. Yep, perfect, 28. Another thing I really like to do is I like to write, you know, when I install this stuff on my equipment, just for myself or the next homeowner, just so they kind of have an idea of when the stuff is installed. So this tank's going to sit like this. So we're just going to write it right underneath the label here. It's just nice because you just kind of have an idea how old the tank is. And the other thing I like to do is I like to write the pressure that this tank runs at on the tank, just so that you kind of remember. So I'm going to write it kind of close to the Schrader valve, but my system runs 30-50 psi. Okay, this thing's ready to go. Let's start looking at the plumbing that we need. I bought this kit on Amazon. I'll put a link to it in the description, but it's a pretty nice kit. It comes basically, it's called a tank tee or tank kit. And it kind of comes with everything you need. So this is going to come out of your pressure tank, and then this is going to be your, you know, your little nipple, and it comes with a new pressure switch. Those are going to go on there, and then this is going to be your, you know, your drain. It's going to go in here, and then it's got a pressure relief valve that goes here, and then the pressure gauge goes here. And it comes with some Teflon tape, so it's just really nice. I also like that the union is here, so it makes replacing the pressure tank a lot easier in the future. You can just unscrew this union, pull your tank out, put this piece on your new tank, and then put the union back together. Pretty nice setup. So anyways, I recommend getting one of those kits. All right, let's start getting this thing taken apart. So we're gonna take. All right, here's the bottom of the tank. I'm just gonna unscrew this T here. All right, so my strategy is gonna be, I had bought these also at the hardware store because I assumed this job was coming. And so what my plan is on this side, I'm gonna reuse these pieces of plumbing. And this, you know, this measures up exactly the same length. And so my hope is I can just unscrew this pipe and union and use that on the supply side. And then on this outgoing side, instead of doing this with the gate valve, I'm just going to do this 1 inch to 3/4 inch drop, and then a piece of copper, and then I'll just 90 it up like that. And so it'll replicate this, and then this ball valve is going to go in here. And then I'll take out this union. I won't need that union anymore because there's a union right here to take the pressure tank off. So I'm just going to do that. And you'll want to clean these threads up really good. What I usually use is a brass brush, and I just kind of clean them up. You don't want to scrape them, but you want to get all that old pipe thread compound off of there. See how nice those threads look now? All shiny, nice and clean. Those are going to seal good. That's what you're looking for. Okay, I've got a small drip here. When I was trying to crack this union, I moved that joint and it just won't seal back up. So I'm gonna pull this pipe off of here and just kind of take a look at what we got. One of the improvements you can make is, you know, see how far this goes down. So typically you can use 2 band clamps or hose clamps, which is what I'm gonna do. Yeah. The other thing is, ideally this would be cut at a 90, which it is totally not. It's pretty bad cut, so I didn't cut that, but if you cleaned that up, it would help. All right, what we're gonna do, heat this up in some boiling water, slide them on here. That should shrink them up, and then hit them with the hose clamp and should tighten them up, I hope. Okay, it's time to start assembling our parts. So this has got an O-ring in it, this union for the tank tee. So I'm just gonna put a tiny bit of silicone grease on here. This is valve grease. Just a very, very, very light amount, just to kind of help it get in there and not get dried out, not get dry rotted, you know. So we got the valve grease on there, and we're just gonna put a little bit of pipe thread compound on the threads of the union. Not a lot, really. You're just trying to lubricate them so that that union tightens down real nice and easy. That's gonna go on there. We're not gonna get crazy tight yet. We'll tighten it down once it's on the tank. All right, so there's a protective cap in here that you're gonna wanna pull out. Like that. And then this tank tee is gonna go in here. Like this. And you wanna get some thread compound on here, pipe thread compound on this joint. Like that. Now this piece is going to need to be facing like this when it's done. So you want to turn it till it gets tight, which is probably right there. Oh, no, that's not tight enough. So we're going to go one more round around. I'm going to have to go put it in a vise to do it. But anyways, I'm going to go one more time around and make sure it ends right there at a 90 so it fits on there just like I want. Again, we're going to tighten that up real tight once we're done. But we want it to be able to move just a little bit right now. Give us a little bit of give. Okay, next it's time to try to fix these this polypropylene pipe or whatever this stuff's called. We need it to connect to that union piece that went here and back up to this connector up here. So we're gonna do that. Show you how I'm gonna do that. This is a trick I've learned in my past where you take the rag and you dunk it in boiling water or really hot water, and then you wrap it around the pipe, and it basically will soften up that pipe. And it's just a way to get a pipe that you can't dunk the pipe in the hot water. So this is a way to get hot water to it to kind of soften it up. Use the same trick if your pipes ever freeze too, by the way. You can wrap hot water around them. All right, what I'm doing here is I'm gonna actually dunk the polypropylene pipe in hot water right there for just a couple seconds, and it softens it up and it lets it slide onto that joint easier. And when you tighten up that hose clamp, it really like wraps it around that joint. So you see it, I did it on each one of these joints, and it actually fixed the leak on all these joints, which was nice. And I just want to match this old one as much as possible, so I'm going to use it as reference. Here, I'm just cleaning up some of the copper. I'm using the emery cloth and a couple of the tools that I have, wire brushes, etc. You want to clean up the copper, even if it's new, and give it a nice clean surface for when you put the flux on and solder. A couple hints I have. If your flux is old, I would recommend buying some new. I actually struggled with this flux quite a bit because it was old and I ended up buying new. You'll see later in the video, and it helped a lot. And then also another trick is you should wipe off the excess flux off the surface, and you should really just leave the flux inside the joint. So you lubricate both sides with flux and you put them together, and then you wipe the flux off and then solder it. I didn't do that here, and it makes your soldering a little bit uglier, and the solder just kind of runs on the flux. But later you'll see a joint I actually do, and I make a mistake and it leaks, and that was one of the issues. My flux was old, and I didn't wipe it off before I soldered it together. And also, I didn't clean the copper well enough before I soldered it. But in this particular case, these joints are fine. They're just a little bit ugly, and I could have made them look a little bit better had I wiped the flux off before I soldered them. So I learned that afterwards, and it's just a learning curve. So maybe watch a couple videos on how to solder joints, and you'll do a little better than I did here. This is just one more section that I'm soldering, and I'll just note soldering ball joints is a little bit difficult, so you may want to watch a couple other videos on just soldering ball joints, especially lead-free ball joints. They're just a little bit harder to heat up and deal with, so maybe watch a couple videos on that before you try it. It's not the cleanest soldering, but I'm a DIYer, so what can I do? All right, a little bit of pipe thread compound. You can use Teflon tape too. There's nothing super special about this part. I'm just putting some pipe thread compound on the pressure switch and the pressure gauge and screwing them in and tightening them down, tight enough that they're in the right orientation. And I think that they're tight enough they won't leak. This section is not my proudest DIY moment. I am reaming out the pipes here and cutting them. And I'm cleaning up the copper like you're supposed to with my, the tools that I have.
but I did not quite clean the copper far enough. And I mentioned earlier, this flux is old and it doesn't let the solder flow quite like it should. So anyways, I put this joint together and you're going to see it here. It's pretty sad, but I'm just going to leave it in here for you. I'm trying to solder this joint and the solder is just not sucking into the joint like it's supposed to, partially because the copper is oxidized, partially because my flux is old and it's not in the right place. So you're going to see I just keep adding more and more solder, just hoping for the best. And I'm kind of just laughing about it in hindsight. And then, I grabbed the flux and I make a rookie mistake here in a second. I take the towel and cool it off, which is like a horrible thing to do to a soldered joint. And then I add more flux to it and I try to solder it even more. And, spoiler alert, this joint ends up leaking. You'll see it later in the video, and I have to go back and fix it. So I recommend you look up a video of soldering vertical joints, and you'll find some people on YouTube that have done some really nice videos on how to do this correctly. And that's the process I follow second, and it works much better.
That's where that picture comes in handy.
All right, in this area, I'm just referencing some pictures that I had on my phone of the way stuff was hooked up. And I kind of knew how to hook this up, but I just wanted to make sure I hooked it up the same way. And you can tell these wires are actually pretty old, and they really should be in like a flexible conduit coming down to this pressure switch. So I may do that in the future, but for right now, I just hooked them up just to make sure they were working again and to get my water back on.
So the pipe thread says, gas and water pipes 2 inches or less, which all this is, can be pressurized up to 100 psi immediately. For other applications, you might have to wait 48 hours. So all this stuff should be ready to be pressurized right now. And so that's what we're gonna do. Now you wanna open this main valve back up. Look everywhere for leaks. All right, unfortunately we had 3 small little leaks. One was this, so I just, did one more round and tightened it, and that one's good to go. But the other leak is coming from here. This pipe moved when I was trying to get this union off, and I think it broke this old putty thread sealing compound, so we're gonna have to fix that. And then the last one's actually way up here. I knew this joint wasn't very good when I soldered it. I thought it was gonna be okay, but it's not. So I think I didn't clean enough of this pipe, and this is kind of oxidized. So I'm gonna just cut it, and put in 2 couplings and clean the pipe really good and just do it again. So unfortunately, that's what I gotta do. So we're gonna shut the water off one more time and get this done. All right, and we'll get this over to the tool bench, and I'll clean all these threads up with some brass brushes, and I'm gonna pop this coupling off and clean that up also. Okay, I got these nice and cleaned up. They look pretty good. And I gotta do the same thing to these threads. Yeah, right there, there was just a tiny bit. It's a pretty bad solder job. I'll show you how to do a better one on this try.
All right, you can see here, I'm cleaning up the pipe again, up much higher than I did last time. And I'm using a new pipe reamer that I bought. And I'm going to flux these joints with the new flux that I bought from the store. And then when I slide the new piece of copper in, I'll slide those couplings on and then I'll wipe away the excess flux. And this is what I learned in a video that I watched on how to solder vertical joints. And you'll see here when I solder, the flux flows right into the joint. It's a much cleaner solder joint. And I should have done this the first time.
All right, everything looks good. I've got the water back on. I see no drips coming out of here, no drips coming out of here. And I got these couplings up here fixed too. Those two joints soldered up, much better, and everything is working good. So that's it. Pressure tank's installed. This pressure tank is much bigger than my old one, and I think it's going to be great. Thanks for watching my video. I hope it helps you out, gives you some ideas of how a DIYer might be able to install a pressure tank like this. Not a super easy job, but it is doable by a DIYer, and only required one trip to the hardware store. Did make a couple of mistakes along the way, but you know, that's expected. So yeah, my solder joints don't look perfect, and a professional probably could do this a little bit better, but you know, I know it was installed pretty good, and I'm comfortable. I know how it works, and I like to just kind of have that background of my stuff that's installed in my house. So anyways, thanks for watching my channel. Subscribe, hit the like, whatever. Appreciate it. Thank you.
If you're a DIYer or you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to get notifications anytime I put a video up. I'd appreciate that. It will help my channel grow. I am trying to grow my channel to at least 1,000 subscribers, and I am at 800 as of making this video. So if you're watching the video and you're not subscribed, I'd love if you'd subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and check out the links in the description if you want to see any of the products that I used. Appreciate it. Thanks.